Hello again, friends, and welcome to episode 13. This one was a doozy, an over 800-page read. Seveneves by Neil Stephenson was a trek. You'll get to hear our mild disdain soon. Though the premise of this book is intriguing and maybe not entirely out of the realm of possibility. How could we survive without the moon? What would you do if you knew exactly when the Earth was going to be destroyed? Keep listening to find out.
All right, here we go. Let's get into it. Welcome in, everybody. Hi, my name is Gendred. Welcome to the Mess Hall Hangout. This is our monthly book club where we get together and talk about a book that we read this month. Annie, I'll let you take it away.
Hi. Welcome back. Episode 13. Crazy that we've been here for 13 episodes. You can see our usual suspects are here, but we've got kind of a special guest with us. His name is Dan. There's some of his friends in chat, which is really nice.
Hello, everybody.
So we've got, this week is V8's pick, Seveneves by Neil Stephenson, which was a doozy because it was about, 900 pages. Took me a while. I think I was like the last person to finish, but it was an interesting book. I'll say that. So today's activity is going to be a little less messy than some of the other ones. I got
Thank
this really
God.
cool little puzzle. 100-piece puzzle. Where are you, Rachel? I'm doing a puzzle on stream. Somebody ping Rachel.
I can't ping her because it'll mess up the overlays. You go
kidding. Ahead. But so hopefully this one will be done during the meeting. But it's been, this one might be a little bit longer. It was a big book. There's a lot to discuss, a lot of interesting things that happened. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to try to keep the description or the summary of the book short, but like I said, it's a beefy boy. So the book, if you were listening to it, and if you were reading the book, it divides it into like part 1, part 2, and part 3. So part 1, we dive right in. The moon has exploded. In the near future, an unknown agent causes the moon to shatter as the pieces collide with one another. Astronomer and science popularizer Doc Dubois Harris calculates that the moon fragments will begin entering Earth's atmosphere, forming a white sky and blanketing the Earth within 2 years with what he calls a hard rain of bolides, which is just like asteroids hitting the Earth, causing the atmosphere
Fancy asteroids.
Fancy asteroids. Going to cause the atmosphere to heat up and oceans to boil away, rendering the Earth uninhabitable for thousands of years. The world's leaders evacuate as many people as possible into space. It's to a swarm of arclit habitats called a cloud arc, in orbit with the International Space Station, bolted to an iron Arjuna asteroid called Amalthea. I didn't research why it's called Amalthea, but I was like, oh, lady should read this book.
Yeah, I don't remember them saying why it was called that. I think that's just the name they gave it.
Yeah,
I think they ever gave a reason for that name.
So this big asteroid called Amalthea provides protection against the moon debris. Protects the International Space Station and the cloud arc from the debris. By the time the hard rain begins, 701 days after the destruction of the moon, approximately 1,500 people have been launched into orbit. Boy, is that a summary of that part 1.
Yeah. Hold on. Wait, quick thing. This is like a third of the book, right? A third of the book is like, we're all gonna die. Let's try to get as many people into space as possible. Continue.
Yeah. I'm gonna shoot all these people into space. There was a selection. Yeah. Part 2, human civilization, as well as nearly all life on Earth, is obliterated. U.S. President Julia Bliss Flaherty manages to get herself up to the Cloud Ark, despite provisions that members of the government would not be launched into space. Flaherty persuades the majority of the Arklets to abandon the International Space Station and move to a higher orbit in a decentralized swarm, in the process causing the International Space Station to be struck by a bolide and suffer catastrophic damage that kills 300. Meanwhile, leader Marcus Luker and robotics engineer Dinah McQuarrie take a small crew to an ice comet fragment that billionaire Sean Probst has gotten into Earth's orbit for the purpose of providing propellant for the space station. And all of this is being described in great detail in the book. So, yes, that's what's happening. Probst's crew, the billionaire Probst's crew, has died of radiation sickness caused by nuclear fallout from his ship's nuclear reactor. They bring the ice to the Cloud Ark, though McQuarrie is the only survivor of this mission. Using the ice comet, the remaining third of the Cloud Ark and space station, the space station now named Endurance, takes 3 years to reach the Cleft, a Grand Canyon-sized crevasse on the now exposed iron core of the moon. By this time, Flaherty's swarm has been decimated, resorting to cannibalism to survive. While the fallout from Probst's ship has killed most of Endurance's crew, the 11 swarm survivors, led by a woman named Aida, negotiate reuniting the swarm with Endurance. However, fearing ostracism by the crew, Aida starts a battle for control of Endurance that fails and reduces the population even further. Good for you. When Endurance reaches the safety of the Cleft, there are only 8 female survivors, only 7 of whom, Dinah, Ivy, Aida, Tekla, Camilla, Moira, and Julia, are able to bear children. Moira can still use her genetics laboratory to rebuild the human race by automictic. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Parthenogenesis. Science stuff.
Sciencey stuff.
Agree. And they go into great detail in the book. They agree that each of the 7 Eves gets to choose how her offspring will be genetically modified or enhanced. And then...
hang on. We should add to that, because there was a lot more involved in that decision. They all get to make one choice, one modification. And it involved Dinah going outside and putting C4 on a window because they couldn't stop bickering about their choices.
They had a fight, and then Dinah decides to say, I'm going to blow us all up if you don't decide.
Yeah.
And they decided that everybody gets to pick one, not just whatever they want. Which is that kind of makes it sound like you can just do whatever.
Like
it was more specific than that. Yeah.
And so like, it's really funny to me though. This summary, which you've done a fabulous job of, is like, I want to be clear. This is part 2 of the book, right? And this is a 33 hour book. And I'm not even kidding when I tell you, Annie has just summed up 20 hours with like probably two good paragraphs of sentences. Like, this was a very hard book to get through. Please continue.
Do you like science and learning about like the
force vectors and
read this book? Okay, so now we're jumping to part.
Yes, I do.
3. Part 3 finds us 5,000 years later. There are 3 billion people living in a giant ring of different habitats circling the Earth. The population is divided into 7 races, obviously, each of which descends from and is named after one of the 7 Eves and carries distinct racial characteristics that harken back to the personalities and characteristics of the original Eves. Most of the iron core of the moon has been used to build the habitats, while Cleft itself has been turned into what's called the Cradle, an exclusive piece of real estate attached to a tether that occasionally docks with the Earth along the equator. The ring is divided into two states, red and blue, which are engaged in a Cold War. Efforts to terraform Earth for the past several hundred years have proven fruitful. Although the process is incomplete, some have resettled the planet in violation of treaty agreements. Doc Hu Noah forms a 7 with one member from each race to investigate mysterious people who have been sighted on Earth. They discover that some humans, diggers, have survived the hard rain on the planet by living in deep mines, and others survived in ocean trenches using submarines. They're called pingers. We've got diggers and pingers on the planet. The latter group descends from a separate, secret underwater ark that had been created concurrently with the Cloud Ark, but by the red side. And the red... like, how deep do I want to go into this?
You can gloss over it. There are fighting factions. The red and the blues. Call it that.
Yeah. The red are mostly descendants from the cannibalistic Aida.
And
yes, Story. Look, there is actually a wonderful Twitch enhancement called Better Twitch TV. It's an extension to your browser, and it will do that for you very nicely.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the brief summary.
All right, where do we want to start?
we just saved everyone else 32 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
I want to start with this was. I read a headline that said that this was Bill Gates' favorite book of 2016. It was like one of 5 books that he recommended.
He's a very technical person. I could totally believe that.
I would be interested in hearing like what he had to say about like the description of like the creation of the Cloud Arcs and the like literally like all of it.
I think it was very interesting, just like the whole how much detail there was, like sections of the book just talking about the force vector requirements, force delta V's to get an asteroid full of water back to Earth. Is like, it broke my brain. There were parts I just started tuning out, and I did not enjoy like that. I did not like the fact that I tuned it out. I wanted to be present for the book, but some of that really was terrible.
I apologize.
Not asking for apologies.
As somebody who's put a lot of hours into Kerbal Space Program, I already knew the majority of those definitions and stuff he was talking about, so
that's fine.
I already was kind of on board. But I could definitely see how getting that technical out of nowhere is rough.
And like, I feel like the book, we immediately jump right into like, the moon has exploded, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like,
that was great.
Like first sentence.
I fucking loved that part. I was like, yes, we're starting with a bang. Literally, let's go. And then it's like, oh, political drama for the next 10 hours. Like, oh, fuck. Like, really?
Yeah, but also like barely political drama.
It's true.
Right? It's just like, we made this decision and it was the right decision to make and nobody's arguing. And like,
the
what? I was
biggest
like, what?
drama was when they opened the hatch and Julia's there, and I was like, motherfucking.
Well, and then, the Venezuelans too.
Yes.
Yeah, and at the end, the Venezuelan thing.
Ooh, that was rough too. Yeah.
There's no more Venezuelan Navy.
It's gone.
But that's like years into
the book,
the situation, right? The Julia thing is sort of the start of section 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was almost 2 full years into it before they nuked that site.
Yeah.
Or no, they nuked the Navy. They airburst the site.
Yeah.
So they could still launch stuff.
I, after finishing it, went and watched some interviews with him talking about it. And one of the things that I found were there were a lot of people online. I didn't look at what Bill Gates had to say, but there were a lot of people who truly loved this book and were like vociferously defending it. And like, people say it's hard sci-fi. It's not hard enough for me. And like,
it is. It's hard enough for me.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Like, hard sci-fi isn't something that I've gotten into.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had, but I was wrong. You know, I was like, I read a short story by Philip K. Dick and Asimov. I like know what hard sci-fi is, and it was like, no.
You think
and
you
to hear,
do.
And one of the interesting things that he said in one of the interviews is like, I want people to be able to skip it and not miss anything.
What?
And I was like, that's a weird
take.
An interesting, yeah, that was an interesting way. And I wish I would have seen it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was like how I would take it in, like as he's like explaining how they created, you know, 1 G force of gravity or whatever it is, or like, you know, going over how many thousands of transistors they're going to need to ship up and how they're going to save them from radiation
cosmic rays.
sickness.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is this going to be plot important? Do I need to? I was like, my inclination, my sort of like ADHD inclination is to just flip the page, just like skip through this. But because we were doing the book club, I was like, I gotta really muscle through it.
Same.
And then at the end to have him be like,
yeah, you
I just write as much. You could have just skipped it. And that was the case in the end. I was just like, yeah, you can skip this stuff. Like, why are you doing this? And it does make me think about watching these people who are like, I love this part. It's like, oh, I come from this storytelling background and this, you know, undergrad creative writing program that was focused on, you know, literary fiction. So I have a very narrow view of like what good is. And then to watch these reviews and critiques of these just, you know, very bespectacled people with you know, their pocket protectors in, being like, it's not hard enough for me. I'm like, oh, there's like this whole, they don't want a plot. They just love like delving into the idea of it. And that's why this exists for them.
Those are the kind of people that read.
Oh, Satana!
Jesus Christ. I forgot about that. Thank you, KB. Oh my God. Okay. Those are the kind of people who read schematics for the Starship Enterprise and are so happy to do so. And like, I'm glad people like that exist because I'm glad there's a nerddom for everything. But I could have done without that.
Yeah, they're definitely the kind of people that leak the military documents onto War Thunder.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's okay. It's good. It's good like that's out there. I wish I'd known that I could have skipped it too, because I totally would have just skipped major sections of this book. I mean, there are several times where I would listen to sections and I would completely like just zone out what I'm listening to because I stopped caring. And then I'd be like, fuck. And I'd like roll back like an hour and listen to it again because I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
This one, I guess I'm kind of like,
I thought you were going to say because people were killing each other.
No, that'd be great. Like that part, I was okay with conflict. I was okay with nuking things. I was okay with the moon exploding. I was okay with most of humanity dying. Like, for me, the the best part is actually part 3, which is by all accounts like could have been a sequel. Could have been like book 1 could have been literally or part 1 could have been a book by itself. Part 2 could have been a book, could have been a sequel to that part. Part 3 could have been a complete standalone book, which I would have read all by itself and been happy with. Like, it's just the first 2 led up to all these things. Like, oh, most of the earth is going to die in 2 years. Oh, most of the earth is going to die in 1 year and 360 days. Like, oh my God, like just get to it. Like, I don't care. Kill all of the world. Please, let's move on.
And then they do, and you don't even get to hear it.
Yeah.
Of the lady narrator's voice. She made some of the characters like make me not like some of the characters because of the voices she gave them. But that's my own issue. But then like to hear Dan say that some people were like, this wasn't hard enough, and I was like, when I first read The Martian, I like that was hard for me. I was like, wow, it's so descriptive. And then I read this book and I'm like, my brain is fried.
Well, again, like, and I have no qualms with like, there are definitely people that this book was, I guarantee this is somebody's favorite book. Like, for sure. Like, I understand that. I would like to have found like a Cliff Notes version.
Yeah. I just need part 1 and part 2 Cliff Noted. But then like part 3 for me was the most interesting. And then like I want to know more now because we learned a little bit more about the diggers, but I want to learn more about the pingers and what happened in the oceans. Because I'm guessing like they had somebody like Moira, like a geneticist, to help assist in making new or adjusting genes to give people gills and whatever.
Well, yeah. So, do we have any questions that focus on part 1? Because I want to get past like those parts.
Part 1,
No.
Part 1 was all like the moon explodes. There's people already trapped on the International Space Station that will never get to return home again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Which I thought was like, that's tragic.
I'm interested in hearing people. What did you guys think it was funny?
Like, which part? Like, so I thought there was definitely like comedic parts of it. I definitely enjoyed sort of, what's his name? Who's the Neil deGrasse Tyson of this book?
Dubois.
Yeah, Doob.
Yeah.
I liked Doob's character. I feel like he had this.
His voice that she gave him though, it was
so bad.
Snobby.
The voice acting was the narration was terrible. I'll just say I got through it. It was okay, but like I definitely wasn't in love with some of her vocal caricatures of certain people. But that being said, I really liked Doob's character. I enjoyed his like sort of mental struggles, and then he was like, I kind of just wish it was like he voiced my feelings. He's like, I kind of wish it was over. I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I wish it was over too. Like there was that made me laugh when he said that. I was like, the author knows at this point that we've said enough of part 1.
There were little parts that like I was like, this is supposed to be funny, but when he was doing like reading it to a crowd, people were like gut busting laughing, and I was like, oh, this is another thing where it's like, this is scientist humor. Like at one point Dubois is like, I'm allowed to name the things I discover, and that just got a huge guffaw, and I was like, oh, I didn't understand that was a joke. And then there was like another one about PowerPoint that like really got people going, and I was like, I knew that one was supposed to be a joke, but
nope, I missed those entirely.
Yeah.
I feel like I got most of the jokes that were like supposed to be a joke, but I didn't really think any of them were funny. Probably because I'm a truck driver and I don't deal with those type of things.
I ain't no scientist.
I thought a lot of it was just really sad. I think there was like a lot of, you know, when Doob was talking to his wife, you know, about, and she's like, she made the realization that he was going up before he did. Like that was just like a very deep moment because he was like, what? No, they're not going to send me. And she's like, of course they're going to fucking send you. Yeah. Like, and I'm like just seeing him sort of like mentally struggle with that. And he was like, no, they're not. And she's like, she knew reality before he did. And then the president's like, we're setting you up. And he's like, what? Like he, that part was very, I think it would be very difficult. Like I couldn't put myself in his shoes at that point. If you knew everybody you loved was going to die and you could live on, like that, the fact is, most of those people that went to space didn't live anyways. So going up didn't really matter for Doob. He could have just stayed back and spent like his last time with his wife and kids.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that in the end, unfortunately, didn't matter at all.
Mm-hmm. You know, sending up the gene samples and all that, like it didn't matter. Even though it was like most people realized it was never going to matter early on, it really did never matter, which sucked.
Yeah, but like Moira knew that from the beginning. She's like, the only thing that really matters is this database that we can go off of. The actual samples are probably not going to survive long enough anyway, even not counting getting hit by stray radiation.
Yep. I definitely, I will say I liked the billionaire philanthropist like that. That was very much a like Probst going up and being like, there's a problem here and I'm going to go ahead and solve it. Cause like he showed up and everybody was like, what the fuck is this rich guy doing here? He shouldn't be here. And he's like, I'm not going to be here long. I've got to help y'all solve a problem that you don't even know you have yet. And they're like, what? And like, he's like, don't worry about it. Dinah, I'm stealing your robots. And off he goes. Is like that was solving a problem. Like it felt like that was sort of injected to this story, probably as an afterthought that ended up being sort of critical to how some other people ended up dying, but also to solving like sort of this other problem. Some of these things just felt like add-ons that were okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really liked the whole, who was the Annie? Please don't be mad at me. Who was the original captain of the space station that got replaced later by Marcus? Ivy. So I really liked Ivy and Dinah's
I think
connection.
Ivy is my favorite character. One of my favorite characters.
She's not my favorite, but she's definitely like an awesome character. I think my favorite character is whatever name 2 that becomes 3 in part 3.
Oh, the Moiran?
The Moiran. I really like, she was my favorite character. Cath 3. Yep. Cath 3 was my favorite character. Like, and I think there were some interesting things there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, when they were trying to, like in the end, genetically enhance themselves and stuff, and how, like,
should we wait till section 3?
I don't think anybody had any questions about sections 1 or 2, so that's why I think we're kind of leaking into it.
We're all over the place here.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me get back to the doc.
Things that I want to know, though, like, how did the moon explode?
Nobody knows.
Like,
nobody knows.
Like, nobody knows.
So, an external force of some kind, like whether it was random, maybe a star exploded somewhere and this piece shot off into space and ended up flying straight through our moon, which caused all of our people to die. Like, it's totally random. Nobody knows. That's why they call it the agent, because they don't know what Was it an agent of chaos? Was it an actual like agent of an alien?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I
know.
That.
I'm interested in everybody else's thought on this because that worked for me. Like they made it for me clear. Like as a reader, you don't need to know. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it happened and you're watching the aftermath. But
that was so
it sounds
hard
like
for me.
But it sounds like it was so hard for Annie. Was it
so
hard for anybody
me.
else that you just like kept going back to it? Like, why did it happen?
If it makes you feel better, Annie, you could just pretend that it was that manhole cover that the United States launched into the orbit with that nuclear test in the 50s.
Jesus. I was just like, I need to know why. And maybe it's just like I'm uncomfortable with uncertainty. Like, just give me the clarification. But, you know, sometimes I like the open-endedness ending of a book. So I don't know why my brain, with this one, my brain is just like, but why did the moon explode?
But this isn't even open-endedness. This is open beginningness. This is like the very start.
That's true. It did start with a literal bang. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's what they throw at me.
Yeah, I think I like that too. It's like the Big Bang is what starts things and we don't know.
The moon is already done. This moon is toast.
Yep.
But
I struggled with that.
Surprise anyone?
Hi there, mister.
I am.
I guess this is getting like really far into it, so maybe I'll ask it later. It's about the cannibalism.
Okay. Like I guess do you want to go to
that's a bit farther.
Let's go to the doc and maybe work through there. Do we have like questions in there to work from?
Dan has 3 good questions. But I didn't know if you wanted to talk more, if anybody wanted to talk more about like, did anything in part 2 stick out before we jump 5,000 years into the future?
I mean,
at the very end of part 2 is where the hard science just goes away. And this is something that I had to like look up and just double check on my own to be like, am I an idiot? Because the rest of this seems so... I was kind of taking it for granted when he would explain the science of stuff. I'd be like, well, it looks like he did a lot of research. And then he gets to this part where he's like explaining genetic code. And I'm like, I've only read one book about how they decoded the genome and of the race to get the human genome. And I was like, this is not like, nothing of you're saying is like fitting with this. And it's like, we've really debunked just very thoroughly the idea of like different races. Like that's all cultural, and it's important for us to talk about those things and like be sensitive to that because that's like part of our fucked up society. But for scientists to think in terms of race as like, oh, if somebody has blonde hair and blue eyes, they're a different race of human than someone who's taller or someone who is predisposed to, you know, depression versus someone who's predisposed to aggression. It's like, that's not really, you're not a different race. You're just a human with like a
different
predisposition.
Traits.
And then the other thing is that it's not turning like if you want somebody to be taller or if you want somebody to be more aggressive, there's no single, it's not like going in and like flipping an ATG like peptide bond. It's like, you know, there's not just like one little thing that you do. All of our DNA code is like connected. And if you mess with a little bit of it, you're messing with other things and you like don't know what's coming out the other end. Like it doesn't.
We learned that in the last book.
Thing really bothered you.
So that like really bothered me.
Into the mix.
Right. It really bothered me. It made me question his science in the other parts. And it also just seemed both like weirdly cynical as we get into that third chapter and how people divide it up. And just like, yeah, just like that's not the messaging I want. You know, that different races have different aptitudes, and like it's kind of like black people are good at basketball. You know, like that
like
seemed
when
to
he
be
does
like his
the whole,
justification.
like, Techlins are going to be physically larger and stronger and
right. And there's these certain guys who are
to conflict, or
yeah, exactly. And it's like, no. Also, then he like epigenetics is like, I don't think that I don't know enough about it, but that's like not how that works. That's like just clearly magic.
I think his strong suit was definitely in describing the, like, we're on the space station and we see that asteroid far away that has ice. We're going to build something, and I'm going to go into great detail about how these people will construct the spacecraft that will go swing around the moon or swing around the earth and propel itself at blah apogee to grab this ice chunk and bring it back. Like, that was his strong suit. And the genetics, he kind of was like,
magic.
Sure.
Yeah.
This sounds like it makes sense.
I think I suspended all belief in most of this because I had no inclination to like try to understand like the science and the physics and everything. When it came to like, well, we're gonna make, like 7 new races, I was like, tongue in cheek, okay, sure, whatever. Like, you're gonna make, communities of people, sure, and you're going to interbreed them somehow and not have the problems that creates. Okay, sure, you already said you're gonna figure out how to solve that problem. Yeah, okay, whatever. Let's just get on to the next part. Like, I was ready to be done at that part with the science. I was like, let's get on to the fiction, please.
I feel like that was I feel like he stuck to that so much because of his little like curse that Aida threw on everybody.
Yeah.
In their meeting. And then he's just like, I'm just gonna make this stick even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because there's so many problems with it.
To be fair, she's a goddamn cannibal, man.
Yeah. Her and Julia both should have been.
You're really obsessed with that cannibal thing.
Bitch is crazy. Like, as soon as, like, some of the descriptions too, where it was like, right before they boarded or something, and like the tech guy got shot and he was wounded, and then somebody, like, they were like, oh, and I saw so and so get devoured by them, and I was like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
this guy is still alive and they're eating him.
Well, they
what?
that was like, I want to be clear about this. The whole cannibal thing okay, sure, they ran out of food, and some blogger called it, he had a fucking word for it, unharmed cannibalism or something like that, because he was eating his own leg. I was like,
yeah.
This is just way out in left field. What the fuck ever. Like, but in no way would you ever have like let the cannibal lady in. I don't care if it cuts you down from 5 people to 4. No,
or
she gets 0 trust.
She's dead. Like, you come in here, you're gonna die. I will kill you because you're not gonna eat me.
Yeah. She. I did not agree with the character's choices to keep her just because. Oh, we're running out of people, so let's keep the cannibal alive. Like, no.
No.
That was
also
bad.
like my thing is when they found Julia.
Yes.
They should have left her.
Oh.
No. Yeah, leave her in that capsule.
Like, right, and there's just like that was so goofy. The other like weird, like uncynical thing was right before Marcus dies. He's like, what would we do if there was crime on this space station? And it's like, you've been up there for 3 years, and like,
There's
you
been
know,
zero crime.
Yeah, there's nobody you've ever had to arrest or put into a brig, or, you know.
There's 1,000% been crime. Like,
you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
agreed.
that was like a very bizarre thing that he was just like, you know, what if somebody assaults someone else? And it's like, wait, I was taking that for granted. That there was that they had a police force and were, you know, well, but no, not until the crazy cannibal comes and kills everyone.
I think the only quote unquote crimes up to that point that were even mentioned was like, not even crimes, is like somebody went for a spacewalk and didn't come back. Well, he was very depressed. It's like, okay, we're just gonna, you know, talk about suicide in such a calm manner. Sure. There was understandably, like, in that situation, sure, people are going to be depressed and suicidal, but like the way the author just sort of glosses over a lot of it, I'm like, I don't think, like, I don't know. I didn't enjoy, that's why parts 1 and part 2 just like didn't do it for me. Like part 1 was all like focus on depression around the, you know, 99% of the human race dying. And part 2 was like, well, the 1% that survived, guess what? Most of them are going to die now. Like, it's like, come on. Like, this book is very sad. Like, can we do, and then like, oh yeah, 5,000 years later, now we have, you know, we have mermaid people and we have mole people. It's like, okay, this is science fiction I can read. Sure, let's get on with it.
I really wish they would have gone with that name. By the way, the name Diggers really makes me nervous every time I have to say it.
Oh, Diggers.
It's
they should have gone with Mole People.
Mole People. Like that's.
Yeah, I think Edward put in the chat, but like that was really hard to believe. Like there was just, oh, they lived in submarines. Like give us a little bit. Oh, they dug a hole.
They
like
they
what
didn't live in
for
submarines.
5,000 years?
They said they built a secondary arc system in the like one of the trenches. So they were super
like
deep.
The Mariana Trench or something.
Yeah, so they were super deep in the ocean where they were hoping there'd still be some water. They weren't actually living in the submarines. They were living in another habitat that was just underwater instead of in space.
And it was like what?
And it was like as big as a space station.
Yeah, and what's
his
name?
It was like an Atlantis.
Yeah, and what's his name? Cal kept trying to
show
Ivy, hey, look, I'm going to be okay. We have this thing, but I'm not allowed to tell you about it.
Yeah, he left all these hints
later.
Yep.
By taking all the
they didn't find out
selfies.
later.
The were there hints?
5,000 years later, find out.
Yeah. Did you feel like you could have caught that?
No, they didn't describe any of that stuff until the 7.
It was totally like, here's a plot hole we're gonna fill right here at the end. Like, okay, sure, why not?
Yeah. Through the second part of it, that was one part I was mad because they like mentioned haphazardly right at the beginning. They were like, "There's 2 ways to survive: going deep and going into space." And then they were like, they just never talked about it before. Like that was super incredulous. Like the government doesn't know about any other plans. There's no discussion of like how nobody on the space station has any discussion about possible ways for Earth to survive.
No.
I'm a little surprised that Julia didn't know, considering that Cal was on a U.S. submarine and was going to the underwater arc, that she didn't know it existed.
Here's the thing:
more that she couldn't get to it, so she went to the space one.
Well, I think the other part is it's not that she didn't know; it's that I think every single method of survival was a Hail Mary. The Diggers was a Hail. They could have just had a cave in the moment the bolides started coming down, and it would have been done. Like the pingers.
No, they're miners. They reinforced it. They know.
Right. Yeah. Sure. The pingers, right? Like, you know, what if, the oceans dried up and the bolides kept coming and bam, they're all dead. Like, sorry, Mariana's Trench didn't really save you. Like, each of the opportunities was a Hail Mary. To be honest, Julia was like incredibly traumatized through a good part of it and very defensive and didn't trust anyone else the entire time. So she took every secret she had to her grave.
How do you really feel, Annie?
Julia, get out of here. Julia, 100%, I would have killed you. Aida, you're a cannibal. You're dead. Everyone else is fine.
Yeah,
But-
so with Gendrid's sort of getting into the psychology of Julia, one of the things that struck me as interesting was like he never editorialized the politics from like a narrator point of view. Like he was always third person omniscient, but he would just tell you, he would only editorialize through the people, and everybody shit on Julia. But for me, I was like, if she isn't a sociopath, then she's like actually making some good points. And just like nobody is taking her seriously. So I was like, his point of view is that she's full of shit. But I don't know if that is actually what like him as author was trying to say. Like, the martial law for how many years? Like, why isn't there democracy? Why aren't we having more communication amongst all of us? And why aren't we allowed to like have committees and things like that? Those are good questions. And if she came up there to bring democracy, then that's a very like pro-USA, pro-social thing. Like, I could frame her as a hero if anybody saw her that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Other than herself.
Well,
like already she started off on a bad foot because she's up there, number one.
Sure.
Like, she's not even supposed to be there, and she is. So already it's like down one.
strike one.
And yeah, it's a strike one. And then for her, she immediately starts to try to like push the narrative of like, I'm Julia, I'm the victim.
Fuck no.
Because like
Pause.
the whole
Pause. Before that even happened, she's up there. She shows up. Diana gets there. She's like, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Julia.
Julia,
Welcome
yeah.
in." Well, and they like do the whole dance of like permission to come aboard, and she's looking at her like, "What the fuck?" And the permission granted, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, bolides strike. And next thing you know, the guy who had his broken nose now has no chest cavity. And like, Julia's like, well, I'm shutting this door behind me. Fuck you, Dinah. And at that point, I was like, fuck you, Julia. You need to not exist. Like, from that first point, she had immediately like consigned Dinah to death if she could have. Like, no questions asked. At that point, Julia was already a villain. She might have had some chance at like being a reasonable person or actually being helpful to society. But when she tried to like abandon Dinah, I was done. I was like, sorry, no, fuck you.
Well, they also
Nuking the
point out-
Venezuelans.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing. But they also point out to us that I don't remember who noticed it, but they didn't say anything about it. But that the dude who got hit by the bolide had a
holster.
Holster on, but it was empty. It's like, well, there's only two people in the damn ship, so obviously Julia has the gun. Check her.
I mean, I'm gonna say this, and this might not be believable, but if you're going to launch somebody into space, the people on the ground that were helping them to actually get launched might have prevented them from taking the gun into space, because you shouldn't need a gun fucking in space. Like that's the hope.
Which
right?
is why she shouldn't object to being checked.
I agree. I agree.
If he doesn't have the gun, why does he need a holster?
Because Dinah wasn't playing that mental game. She was just trying to help everybody survive. So the person who noticed, who should have done something about it, was the naive, kind person who then later offered to blow everybody up with a bomb in part 3, before part 3. Right?
Yeah.
Dinah had a huge growth arc from like naive science girl to losing the love of her life to fuck you all. If you can't play nice, nobody gets to live.
Yep. And then 20 minutes worth of audiobook later, they're all gone anyway.
Yeah.
The end. No.
The other thing that bothered me about the first 2 sections of the book was all the constant description of all the like sex going on, but there was no point to any of it because nobody got pregnant. None of those people stayed together. They all died anyway. Why did we need all that description? That could have completely been left out of the book and made it somewhat shorter. Because it served no purpose, really.
The relationship between Dinah and Reese was not valuable at all. Between Dinah and Marcus was pivotal to her character growth. Reese committed suicide at some point later, and just like he had no real character arc.
Yeah.
Was it? Oh, yeah, that's right.
He was a vehicle for more scientific physics knowledge. That's all he was. Here's how you use chains to grab shit in space. Okay, Reese, your character arc's done. Thank you.
I'm over you. That was another like bad voiced character. I think.
I completely I honestly, at some point I just sort of tuned it out and I was just listening to the story. Like the different characters didn't really matter. Yes, I mean, it's not my favorite voice actor.
To be fair, there were some points where I'm pretty sure she forgot to change voices, but changed characters too.
I mean, if I'm going to tell you, chat, if you want to listen to good voice acting, go listen to like any of the Horus Heresy audiobooks. They're phenomenal. This, not so good.
One thing that I liked about this was I thought it was interesting they had 2 voice actors.
Yeah, like
that they switched. The part 3 switched, and that gave me something. But for the parts 1 and 2, she spoke in such a way that I got my listening speed up to 3 times, and she was still legible. And then the guy in part 3, I could not understand him when I put it up to 3 times speed. So
that's fair.
One thing I liked about it.
I'll continue. It's just more of the theme that part 3 should have been a separate book.
Just a heads up real quick. We have an ad break in 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Bio break in 90. Yeah, that's a very good point, Dan. The separate, to me, that just cements the fact part 3 is a separate book. It should have been all along.
Real fast, it was inexplicable what he decided to write about. Right? Like Julia getting off the planet seems so interesting. Why didn't we follow her? We'd been to Earth for Du Bois, so it was sort of like I just couldn't figure out what the rule was. They mostly stayed on the space station, but every once in a while they would leave it to go look at, what somebody was doing with space robots or something else.
Dubois' time on the ground was like character building for him, right? Like, but he was, he went to help build and load actual like spaceships that were sent up. He went and like, his son, he went and went with a bunch of like science kids to go do that. Like he did things to help humanity survive.
The space station.
Yeah. What did
is that
Julia do? What did Julia do? Yeah. Ad time.
Yeah, I don't know if this is ripe for the podcast, the discussion. But yeah, I mean, Julia had a more interesting adventure. Like that's like what I'm saying is like it would have been more thrilling to follow whatever it was that she did to figure out how to fly through space and like fuck everybody over.
Like follow her journey from
to follow that journey.
Because what was it? She was like, they were like, oh, she left the White House and then on the way, so and so killed himself with
her husband.
The pill. Her husband killed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was going through her mind?
Yeah.
I think the author just painted her as a villain from the very beginning, so didn't really give her the space.
God, do I not like her?
The real villain is the fucking moon, and like I think
the moon.
There's no character growth there. It's just a giant rock that got split up into a lot of smaller rocks.
That's not true. It grows immensely.
Character growth. I didn't mean physical growth. Character growth.
I swear I'm not missing a piece, but like
I don't know.
It does seem like you are, though.
Maybe you are. All right, I'm gonna get some water. So quick bio, and then
be right back. We got
ads
2
should be
minutes on
done.
ads still.
Yep.
I'm gonna be defeated by a 100-piece puzzle, and that's gonna be the real tragedy.
Yeah, this is a cool visual. To have
so I've done
you working through the moon.
Aaron had a really good pick 1 month called The Shamshine Blind, and the book cover it relates to like pigments and colors and color theory and stuff, and so the book cover was like a paint by numbers. So that month I did a cool little like paint by numbers thing, which was really fun. This one is frustrating. Aaron, I'd read that one again. Shamshine Blind is really good.
Shamshine?
Yeah.
I don't know that I would. I liked it, but
maybe not for a
I don't know
for you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh no, thank you.
I'd read her next book for sure.
It does feel like I'm missing a piece, but where would it have gone?
One of them secretly wrong.
That's what I'm like. I'm like, oh, this one doesn't like quite align. The puzzle makers did it to me.
But
on
you're
purpose.
so close.
Right? Like you'd think that this would just attach, but it doesn't.
But also, nah. But I don't think it doesn't. Yeah, it's got the beat down there somewhere. Okay, so I don't know how to direct you, but I think, right where your thumbs are when you had them out. I feel like that doesn't look right to me.
Okay.
The bottom 3. Yep.
Oh, good. I'm not the last one back. Jenner's not here yet either.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You're welcome.
It's there's still something like here that's not feeling right to me.
I'm back. Sorry about that. All right.
But I guess I'll just leave it because
It'll pop up if it is. You'll notice it when you get to that point in the middle and it doesn't fit.
Thanks, Dan. that worked. The old switcheroo.
And
So
we're back.
Are we done with the part 1 and 2 now?
Yeah. Thanks
We're
for
going to the
staying
interesting
on it
part of the
with
book.
So, speaking of
Part
like
3, 5,000 years later.
the tiny bit of hard science or hard sci-fi from part 3, I did enjoy the discussion of like the different communities and how they worked and how they like moved and how like they locked with each other and certain other communities at certain points. I actually really want to see like some diagrams about how all that works.
The book, at least mine, let's see. So I can't take the cover off because it's from the library. But you can see here, it shows like here's Amalthea.
Oh, Amalthea is way bigger than I pictured it in my head.
Oh no, it's huge. Yeah.
Dinah's workshop. So Dinah's the one with all the robots who's like excavating Amalthea. Asteroid Amalthea, starboard, and then here's the Taurus, nadir, and then here is like a triad and a heptad. So that's just the front cover, and I can't, like, I want to rip this off, but I can't to see like what's under there. And then the back has what I'm assuming is like, this is I forgot what that one's called. It like docks in the ports because this is the thing that goes around the equator.
Yeah.
Oh man, what is that thing called?
I forgot.
I remember either.
And now, is that where the bar was?
Yeah, I think this is where the bar was.
Okay.
That looks way more intricate than I expected it to be.
I posted the full diagram of Izzy and Amalthea in the Discord.
So like when we follow Kath around and Kath was like trying to run around, she's like, should I go up and around with this bridge or should I go down into the like basement? Like, which is the faster way to get to the bar that she needed to go to meet everybody? And I was like, oh, there's the bridge. But then this would have to be cleft, right? Or so, I don't know.
No, cleft is up in space. That is something different. It had
I thought
a name,
like
but
cleft was. Yeah, I couldn't follow the science at all about what was happening on Earth.
When they were
so
like
this picture
docking,
helped me.
Yeah. Because like this, I know, docks with that, and then they like got on their taxis and went around.
That's way less aerodynamic than I expected, but also a much better visualization than what my head came up with, which was essentially a really long chain with one of those like aluminum aircraft hangers hanging at the bottom of it.
And that was like, some of the descriptions in the third part were a little hard, like when Kath turns herself into a glider, like her glider suit.
Yeah, there was a lot of really cool sounding tech stuff in the third part.
But like, and
can you explain what the Thor was that like came down?
Oh, the hammer
blasted
that like
them, and also saved her.
Isn't the Thor just an extraction tool?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't.
So it didn't
understand
actually like blast anybody. It just dropped a tube. The lasers were like the designation zone for where it's going to hit. You need to stand inside that area or it will miss you.
So pause, take a step back. So at different points, they talk about like these giant spinning things that like dip in and out of the atmosphere. And that's how the gliders get down to the surface or come back up. Well, the way the hammer, I think, to me is described is like one of those, but on the end of one of them is like a pneumatic push that goes out And so as it swings down, the bottom comes down even farther and actually can touch down, because they talk about those things slowing down as people get on and off, which would very much fit in with the idea of the hammer.
Yeah, then they say
I'm closer to understanding.
They say at one point that that the hammers, or maybe that specific one, is the only thing that can actually interface with the ground from the station. That the rest of them don't come that far down. So it was like shocking because it actually touches the earth.
And it scooped up the traitor.
Yeah. That lady, whose name I forgot. She was a red.
Yeah, I'm like, she was a red. She wasn't Aiden, but it was like
Julian.
She was a Julian. I'm like Andrea, but it's not Andrea. I know the rest of it. Ariane.
She was a Julian.
Yeah. Ariane the traitor. So, from my understanding, like in the end, they end up pulling up that like second arc or something. But that's what the red side was working on and building with the pingers.
No, not with the pingers. Red.
No, yeah, the Reds sided with the diggers.
Red actually pissed off the pingers by building what they did.
Yeah, because they just started dropping stuff into the ocean, and they didn't know about them.
Just quick, I guess, like, go back for chat. Okay, so in part 3, we mentioned earlier there are two factions, the blues and the reds, and they do very much have history of a war where they did fight, but at some point they decided to more go into more of a Cold War aspect where they did less fighting and open war, more espionage and such. And Red essentially took on a huge initiative to actually start building back on Earth, and in doing so, pissed off, two of the remaining one of the remaining groups of people that were still on Earth, the pingers as we know it, the people that stayed in the water and the arklets in the water. To be clear, Red is primarily made up of Julians and what are they? Aidens, yeah. Because those were the two factions that actually stuck together. They talk about this at the end of part 2, how the Seveneves generated like these 3 factions within themselves. The 4, which was the Teklins, the Dynans, like was the Moirans part of the 4, or was she her own? Who was separate? Fuck, I can't remember. There was a 4, a 2, and a 1.
I think it had to be Moiran because she like only had one kid.
But she...
Yeah. She was only able to have one child before she was basically not able to
birth more kids. Yeah, most of them didn't survive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Reds are just...
a little
Go ahead.
Crazy that Julian sided with, her abuser.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that early on, Julian was able to sort of like social engineer her way in with most of the arklets, right? She would like sold them, a story and then broke off, and then shit happened and went sideways. I really hate that there wasn't enough detail about actually how all that happened. But
yeah,
we know at one point in time, those two, Aidens and Ida and Julia, were on the same team. And then Ida became the leader of the faction that overthrew Julian and her group and the cannibalism and killed off like almost everybody of the hundreds of people that left. They were down to what, 11 or 12? And Julian was a hostage, right? Julia was a hostage, right? So, but when the cards were down and where there was only 7 of them left, literally, right? Killing each other was no longer an option for most of them because they all wanted to survive. And I'm going to say this, if you're a cannibal, you have to eat somebody. So definitely don't go just killing everybody you don't like.
We got any cannibals in chat?
Yeah, that is not a question I want anybody to answer. Please don't.
Chat, if you're a cannibal.
Annie will be very upset and she'll hunt you
won't.
down,
Go ahead and
but she
clear
won't
yourself
eat you.
in chat if you've committed a war crime.
Oh, God.
Ethical cannibalism. That's what it was. Ethical cannibalism. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because he was eating himself and not other people.
I hated that part where it was like they're gearing up to like merge with each other again, and in preparation like they like gorged themselves on somebody, like, and one of the characters was like, yeah, they were like conserving their energy for today, and so they just consumed blah blah, like whatever character they ate. And I was like,
It was the blogger, wasn't it? Didn't they finish
think
him
so.
off?
Yeah, they definitely
like,
killed.
yeah.
Yes.
They finished him off. I was like, oh God.
Yeah. I don't know, like, how Tekla didn't just kill her outright. Like, honestly,
Right?
her character totally would have been like, you know, fuck the rules. I'm sorry. She's gonna die when nobody's looking. So, like, that's just the complete archetype of Tekla.
What about what is it, the romance between Moirans and Teklans?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tekla was a very, like, butch, Olympic athlete, right? And when she got shipped up, she was actually, like, on a one-way mission and not expected to survive at all. Like, they were shipping up Russians just to be fodder to build the space station. But when shit went sideways and Dinah saved her, like, this whole relationship, and it wasn't like her and Dinah, but like she got brought into the fold, right? And then it was also there's a lot of like just gender fluidity in it, which I didn't have an issue with. I actually really liked how it was more about just the people and the roles and the characters. Like I could have cared less about the sex parts. Like, again, that didn't really add a whole lot except for Dinah's like love for Marcus. And again, that was just more towards the point of like how she ended up making her decision about her offspring.
I thought it was interesting, like how the first, like how Moira and Tekla had a romance, but then it 5,000 years later, like that love and that bond is still there. So you see a lot of Teklans and Moirans getting together, which I thought, I was like, oh, love stands the tests of time and genes, I guess.
I think it was more that I felt like it was more that the old alliances held strong, right? Not necessarily love, but the, you know, everybody looks to the Dynans to be leaders. Like that's just how it is, right? And nobody trusts an Aedan, right? Like even when one of them was totally like a good guy through the whole part 3, like they still didn't trust him most of the time. He was just like, you know, everybody side-eyed him because he was like very much a Neanderthal looking dude. I don't know.
Her choices in her genes were all in defense to everyone else's. So
I hated that. It's like, it's a complete lack of originality on her part, because it was just
do this to counteract that.
Yeah, she did everything out of spite. And that's just such a fucking petty character arc. my offspring are going to be able to beat your offspring. Like, fuck,
And it's
lady,
all
grow the
just
fuck
because
up. There's
she's
7 of us.
It's because you're gonna forever judge me for eating people. No
Yeah.
shit, you ate people. Of course, it's gonna be like a forever prejudice.
Oh my god,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
I
Sure,
picture
for
Annie.
her, but like that they like kept that prejudice for generations. Like
Yeah.
we couldn't get past. Like
So
that
stupid. So
hard
stupid.
for me to. Oh, there's 7 of us. We're all growing up. You know, there's basically 10, 13. You would feel like siblings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You would not like. I just can't imagine a situation where you're like,
Except
our parents don't like each other, but so we're never gonna be friends. Like,
yeah, but in reality, we see it all the time where people are fucking poisoned by their parents to believe stupid things like, don't trust those people. They'll eat you when you're not looking. Mom, weren't we the cannibals? No, that's just what they tell you. Like, she's just like, yes,
Yeah.
people are stupid and evil, and like, it just, that wasn't necessary.
It probably didn't help that they were constantly playing the epic on a loop too. So they're
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's remind everybody about the horrible shit we did.
together.
Like, oh my god, let's put these 7 people on a pedestal who like really did not want to be on a pedestal. It's Happy Eve Day. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and some of them,
Julian Day.
some of them weren't even up there because they wanted to be. They were about to go home when all this shit went down.
Yeah.
That
That's
is like, I
another
could have
thing,
lived
too,
as a
is,
digger,
like,
y'all.
How would you have coped with like being Dinah or being Ivy, and then the shit happens with the moon, and now you're never gonna be able to return home?
Yeah, well, that was just really hard. Like, the whole Ivy telling Cal, like, I release you from your vow. I was like, God damn it. Like, what? Like, okay, sure. Let's have a real human moment after 800 pages of stupid technical bullshit. Why not? Like, let's. I feel like that was actually a highlight. Like, there was some actual humanity in that part of it that I enjoyed. When not the whole book wasn't shit. I'm gonna say this: the whole book wasn't shit, but there were parts I could definitely think could have, like, as the author himself said, you could have just skipped. I want to see an editor go through and like cut out all the bullshit and like make this into the right book.
Make it into the 2 books that it should be.
Here's 2 books, 100 pages each. Enjoy.
Yeah, unless like. So if this is considered like hard sci-fi, like what other books are similar to it? I don't even know, because I guess I do not gravitate towards hard sci-fi.
The most popularized is Andy Weir, like The Martian and that kind of stuff. And I mean, there's certainly more historical examples of hard sci-fi, but I would say Andy Weir brought it into the
Mainstream
public conscious, with
like
especially with the
movies.
The Martian.
Yep.
The movies made it a little bit easier as well, but like The Martian, to me, like, I don't want to say like it's an easy read compared to this book. Yes.
Well, that's what my main takeaway is, that Neil Stephenson, I think Dan touched on this pretty early on. I'm just going to get all my thoughts out because I've had a hard time popping in here. Cares more about explaining how this grounded fantastical thing could possibly happen than, I mean, you guys have gone pretty in depth into like these characters and their motivations and story arcs, and like, for me personally, I couldn't care less. I couldn't connect with any of these characters. All of their characterizations were so surface level. I could not care less about this person's motivation. And I understand that this is like a book club and we're meant to like dissect, and clearly other people felt differently and could find those things, but that's not why I'm here. And honestly, I don't think that's why fans of this book are here. They're here to get the physics explained to them, just like you were. I agree with a lot of what's said here already too. So a lot of this is doubling up, but it's for a specific audience where I think Andy Weir does a way more fascinating job with prose to connect those dots, to connect a mainstream audience with engaging character development, with hard sci-fi and explanation. I mean, the big meme from The Martian is Matt Damon saying, "I'm going to science the fuck out of this," right? It's like it's more humanized. He understands. I don't think Neil Stephenson cares about literature, which is so weird because he wrote 900 pages of this, but I do not think he cares about how to connect stories, how to connect characters, how to make them grow, how to make them. I don't think that's why he's here, and I don't think that's why people who read this book are here.
It's funny that you say this because like when Dan was describing when there was like a reading and like the jokes and stuff were very sciencey and like the science people laughed, and I'm here reading the book and I'm like, that was a joke?
Yeah. We're not the audience.
Like,
we're not the target audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also sometimes feels a little masturbatory. Like, okay, pat each other on the back. I played 1,000 hours of Kerbal Space Program, and some of this stuff was like, dude, fuck off. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on was something that Dan brought up earlier too, which is like, mostly in the third part, which is also super frustrating, that this is a 3-part novel, which gives you such a cheat code into a 3-act story. However, not even each part has 3 acts.
Right.
Not only does 1, 2, and 3 not flow together in any sort of story arc way, but neither does 1, 2, or 3 flow in any sort of story arc way. It's just kind of Pollock throwing science at a wall and going like, look how beautiful this is. And some people think it's beautiful. Some people love Jackson Pollock, right? But other people look at it and they're like, this is a fucking mess. So
why did you put your cigarette butt out on this painting?
Art is subjective. I think,
yeah.
I don't know, this may be too harsh, but I think calling this book art is reaching a little bit. However, in the third act, what Dan talked about was this gene, the lack of science around gene splicing and these different races and race superiority in certain aspects. Example given, like, black people being good at basketball is a really easy allegory for comparison to what he's saying here, which is like, I think calling that concept eugenics is a little overkill, but I think it's close enough for me to go like, ew, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Also, like the red and blue having a Cold War, it's like,
fuck? It's so
roll
stupid.
my eyes.
It's
dude.
so stupid, dude.
Good
points.
Yeah, that's it. I think if you like this book, but you actually want to enjoy it, read Andy Weir. It's wonderful. He's absolutely stunning at doing exactly what Stevenson tries to do here, but actually engaging.
I think Andy Weir does a better job with characters. And then I as a woman, I tend to be very skeptical when men write women. Because it's like 95% pretty terrible. So reading a book that's called Seveneves that ends up with us trying to, like, there's seven fertile women, one unfertile one, left.
Fertile.
Fertile.
Are you trying to say that it should have been called Seven Uteruses?
Seven uteruses. No, but I just have a hard time with men writing women.
Oh yeah.
And
there's a whole subreddit dedicated to this.
I'm already part of it, man. I've been that one for years, and it is hilarious.
What's new, sister?
Pop off, queen.
If anyone's gonna change this stereotype, it's not gonna be Neil Stevenson.
Oh, no. So, like, some of the character things and, like, how he seemingly decided to pick Dinah as, like, this is gonna sound mean, and I'm like, take it with a grain of salt. He chose Dinah as, like, the space slut, where she's, like, sleeping with all the... I say all the guys, but it's just two.
Yeah.
But he picked her as the one who is gonna have these suitors. And I was like, all right, guy, whatever, it's your will.
Well, obviously, because Ivy's in a super long distance committed relationship.
A very, very long distance relationship. But yeah, so I was a little... I didn't really connect with them, is what I'll say. Like, he could have done better with the characters. If he put in as much effort with the characters as he did with, like, the science of, like,
it would have been a better book.
Space ice. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. What do people think about the guys? Like, did you feel like he wrote guys well?
I feel like he.
You already know how I feel about this.
Somebody said this already, but he wrote Dubois as Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He wrote whatever his face was, Probst. Like, honestly, I think that was just Bill Gates. Like, that was just like a philanthropist who went to save the, very much. What do you mean you disagree? Fuck off.
I think he was more. No, I'm not saying he was any better, but I think he was actually written more to be like Richard Branson than Bill Gates.
Sure. Okay. But
there was some argument about who he was.
He wasn't fucking Zuck, and he wasn't fucking Bezos. Okay. Both of those would have went off and done their own fucking things and failed gloriously, which would have actually probably made a better novel. But I think at least Probst was an interesting character in that, like, he was very selfless. Like, there was very little chance any of it was going to work, but he was going to, like, try to give it the best he could with his, fucking money that wasn't going to be worth anything anyways. So he invested all of his money in trying to give human race a chance. Like, I thought that was actually pretty cool. As far as whether or not he was a male or a female, I didn't care. He could have been a female character and been a hard ass and hard to work with and given Ivy shit. Like, I think, I don't think Stevenson's good at writing characters. I'll say that. I do think there is some passable dialogue in this book. I think the action sequences are actually much more interesting. I think he should start writing technical books and give up on actual literature.
Hi there, mister.
Hey, Boston. Science. I definitely, I didn't hate the characters. I didn't hate, like, Ivy or Dinah or any of them. Like, Julia was I did not expect Julia to live as long as she did. And so there was some tenacity to that. And, like, even though she was a hostage through part of it, like, there was something to that was at least interesting. I think the other part, though, is that they, he sucks at writing women. He sucks at writing men. He's not very good at writing a lot of it. Does he create an interesting timeline? Sure. Like, yeah, okay. Like, is this a possible future that like sounds, like an interesting story? Sure. Yeah. Is there too much technical jargon? Yes. Yeah. Way too much, right?
But if you're like super into world building, right? If that's what's interesting. Like I ran across a YouTube channel the other day, and it's millions of subs, and all the guy, he doesn't write any stories. It's just building a world, and he draws little dragons and like has this giant map and is scoping out the wind and how it flows around mountains and stuff.
That's
like that.
fucking awesome.
Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of a little bit what was happening here. Like the world building is thick.
Well, it's not even, the world building is like part 3, right?
You broke him.
Part 3 is world building. Part 1 and 2 is like
spaceship building.
Just yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. But it's like, I think that's just like dumping technical jargon by the fucking truckload on the first 2 parts about science and deltas and like, sure. I think part 3, these interesting like different communities around the world and how like they slowly reseed the earth. Like that's fucking cool. Like I kind of dicked that part.
It's a different book, though.
Part
1 and 2 is I read some technical papers at the space company that I work for. Also, I'm depressed.
I mean, maybe he was hoping that the moon would shatter and kill all of us during parts 1 and 2. I don't know.
I don't know how long it took him to write this, like from conception to publish, but I feel like he could have used like 5 more years to figure out how to tie it all together in a much more elegant way. I feel like he is like a high school kid who's like, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if the moon exploded? And then like, oh my God, what would happen after that? But like, yeah, he read some papers and like he definitely has a background in this but at the same time he's like showing it to his friends who he really wants them to know that he understands this stuff, and it's like, okay, bro, we get it. Like, you really gotta grab. Can we get to the?
Do you think his?
But he found his people,
book, right?
We just have to sign off on this, otherwise he's gonna keep giving us drafts that are even more detailed that we don't understand.
Well,
right.
See,
What are those conversations like?
but I think there's also this aspect of probably through writing this and researching and learning about these different things, he probably did have people that were super into it, like that got early drafts and gave him feedback and suggested like some different things. Like he has his community. Like now there are people who do worship this book.
They're yes men. I think he gave this people to yes men, and people were like, oh, bro, keep going. You need like 10 more chapters of this. Please.
I don't care how
and
the
it's
movie
like
20 hours is not enough. Make it 30.
But like book 3 is so disconnected that it's like, sure, it's much more interesting, it's much more fascinating, we get a little more creativity out of him, but who is this? Like you set me up for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and you couldn't just let me go. Now you have to keep me around for when you decided to get creative with this. I was like pissed, and like it's the best part of the book, and I was like, dude, you're
done.
a fucking dick. You're an asshole. Because now I have to finish it. This is fascinating. This is really cool. But like, how dare you waste 20 hours of my life for a 10-hour chapter? You can't even break it up into chapters, dude. 10 hours, one chapter, one part. You are borderline conceited.
I'm gonna tell everybody.
Are you gonna send him a letter?
I started working on like drafting thoughts about it in my Facebook feed, and I had a funny experience where a couple days after I had posted my first thing, I had 2 people call me on the phone to be like, I gotta tell you about how much I hated this book. And both of them were like, the third part's the worst. And
that's how I felt.
They were like telling me about it, and they were like, then the frog people come, and I'm like, I'm in the third part pretty far. I've got like 5 chapters left, and they're like, I'm like, I think you're talking about a different book. There's no frog people, and
they show up.
Literally like the last,
the last thing we see is that guy emerging from the water.
They show up.
Now
they have a 16 candles moment of like somebody holding up in the water a boombox, and it was like,
that's
okay,
anything, but yes,
okay,
yeah. But the second guy who was complaining about it, his favorite part was all the science stuff. He was like, Dan, I just can't wait to tell you. He's so right about how we need to save fucking PCP boards, and
oh my god,
we'll never be able to make microprocessors up there because Taiwan's the only place that can do it, and like this is bringing up like so much. I've just been thinking about it. We really gotta
Jesus Christ.
solve these problems.
That's the thing though, is like you can have those same exact experiences, but have a fulfilling story with Andy Weir. I'm sorry, like Andy Weir does just as good of a job at explaining the science of stuff. He has the background, he has the know-how, he knows that, but he cares about interweaving it into a narrative. Like
Andy
I feel
Weir
like
cares
what's
about
really fascinating about Seveneves is the literary device of let's have something really crazy happen, like the moon exploding, and then never focus on why and only focus on the humanity of how we deal with that, and then falls flat on its face in coming up in delivering on that, because I think he didn't even realize that's what he was doing. I don't even think he realized that he was trying to tell a story about the ramifications of something fantastic, where many other sci-fi books would go like, what alien blew up the moon, and then we would go in that section. But like I feel like he just stumbled into that and then had no idea that that's what he was supposed to deliver. I don't know. That's my opinion too. You guys have more thoughts on the characters. Like they could live or die. Every single one of them could live or die, and I'd flip the page. I don't care, man.
I'm gonna spoiler. They all die. They all die.
Yeah. I think that's was my sort of deep thought takeaway, was this idea of like on all time frames. We think we're so trying to live and the end of the world is coming, but like on all time frames for human life, if you live 100 years, it's still a blink of the eye to 5,000 years. And just like there is something that sparked in me this idea of like, what's the biggest possible mark you could make on the earth, and like, are you squandering your shit? There's something in there for me that like hit, like even if you live for 5,000 years, like it's still in the terms of like universal time scale, it's nothing. And like I haven't come to a real conclusion to that, but it's like, how can you be sad that the whole world died? Because all those people were gonna die anyway, just 60 years later. Like what is the thing you want? It's your genes to go on? Like what is it? And I think I haven't come to a conclusion about that, because it's like I haven't fully examined it. Like, do I really care about human DNA?
Nope. I'm gonna stop right there, just because like there's no like look there's fucking billionaires who are leaving absolutely zero permanent impact on our society. like Facebook as much of a pain in the ass as it's been, won't exist in 500 years. It'll be gone.
Hey, you leave Spacebook alone.
Yeah,
it'll be Spacebook by then.
Space version of everything.
I think there's like, the real testament. Yeah, super negative impact. There's no real, like, what are we doing? Like, what there's so much. The reason I read sci-fi and fiction and fantasy is because, like, the real world sucks. Like, I don't really want to think about other problems because I can't solve them. I can't solve world peace. I can't solve hunger. I can't fucking stop the wars in Ukraine or Israel. Like, I can't do any of it. So I'm just going to sit over here and read my shitty science fiction books.
I'm going to lose my mind in these science fiction books.
Yeah, time to blow up the moon. I think that's a good call.
Oh, I would just like to throw out there before we get to the point of ending this that when I recommended this book, I completely blocked the first two parts out of my mind.
You shithead.
I only remembered the end of it.
He tricked us.
No, I knew I vaguely remembered it, but I didn't actually remember how detailed and how much it dragged. I just remembered that I really liked the ending story, that I found that compelling. And
I mean, that's all I'm going to remember.
Yeah. Because, like I said, I read this originally, 7 or 8 years ago? And none of that is worth remembering. I just remember at the time I read it, I was like, I really want to talk to somebody else that has read this book. And nobody I knew had read it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to force anybody to read it.
Well, you forced us to read it, you shithead.
Made y'all read it.
It's all right.
I like the reaction from Squandy. Is like, it just reminds me of the Quoth blow up.
You know what? I want to ask, which one do you dislike more, Quoth or Neil Stephenson, Squandy?
I think I misportrayed my emotions about this because I get very animated, and
to be fair, the Quoth episode, I think you were just coming off of a cold, or you had a cold or something.
True, but that was justified. That book is absolute trash. The difference is that, like, at least two things. Patrick Rothfuss has a way with words that could swoo me so hard. Sweep me right off my feet. He just wrote about a really annoying, shitty character that I had a very visceral reaction to disliking, which is that's good, right? Like, I strongly disliked it because I felt something. I don't feel bad. Like, I don't feel anything about this book. So it's they're completely separate. I am not angry at this book. I think that there are problems with it that I've explained, but I don't hate this book. I'm impartial to this book. This book could live or die just like its characters, and I would move on with my life. But Kavoth, oh, I want to see that guy die so bad.
Oh my god. Yeah, folks, if you haven't listened to that episode of the podcast, please go check it out. Oh, that's not the right command. Folks, I made a new command.
Oh, yeah. We have a
this makes me want to read that book. Say the actual name of that book again.
The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Yeah, super, like, it's a very well-liked book. I loved it and read it multiple times, listened to the audiobook multiple times, and then heard Squandy's opinion of it, and it totally changed my mind about the main character. I still like the book, and I like the author, and I like the series, but it's definitely, like, not as, like, it's tarnished a little, which is fine.
Every time you look at it now, you're like, oh.
You know what? I was telling somebody today, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever read that book again. Like, I've read it a couple times. I have it on my shelf behind me. But, like, if he ever releases the third book, I'll probably read it one more time just so that I can get through the whole series at once.
Yeah.
You know, and, like, I there are very few books I will say that I've read more than once. Like, honestly.
Right. Yeah, that's really special. to have done that.
So, I
His writing is so good, though.
his world building is phenomenal. Kvoth is just like not a
like
really
music.
great character.
Yeah, Rothfuss, though, I would love him to just pump out some books because I could read him for days. I just get that guy out of here. I don't want Kvoth.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna write an anti-Kvoth novel and let Squandy just edit the shit out of it. All right. Well, is there any more closing notes or topics we want to talk about from the book before we move on to a short discussion about next month's book?
Yeah, before everybody goes to bed angry, I feel like we should say one good thing about the book.
What? Say one.
Yeah, 5 out of 5 by the book.
Lots of good.
There have been good ones. Yeah.
If you read the summary of this book, like the Cliff Notes, I am so sold. Like, moon blows up, space station, 5,000 years in the future, landing on a ice meteor to blah, 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 blah. You know, oh my God. I'll buy 10 copies of it.
But little did you know that
and then I
description
read
is
it.
just part 3. It's not
Dude,
the entire book.
exactly.
It's just part 3.
Such a good concept. Love how it gets going at the beginning. And then the third part is fantastic in a very frustrating way. Yep. Those are my positives.
Very awesome concepts. If you ignore the actual science and then the fucked up science, it is. I think it's a decently good novel. You can skip a lot of the bullshit. When you think you're falling asleep, just jump ahead an hour. You're probably fine. Like, I swear to God.
You're not missing
now that I know that, I did enjoy
so weird he
part
said
3
that.
to get there. I do enjoy part 3. I wish it had just been a separate book. Like, and I think it's worth reading part 3. Skim parts 1 and 2. And if you listen to it on Everand, which is where I listen to it, it is broken up into chapters. They're not very great or they're not structured chapters, but there are chapters, and it's easier to skip ahead in sections. And I definitely suggest that.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Audible,
where I
part
listen to
3
it.
is one 10-hour long chapter.
No, dude, fuck that.
Really?
Fuck that.
Yeah,
Really?
the Audible, actually, like the official. It's because I didn't listen to the audiobook. I read the book. There's no place to stop. There's no place to read it before bed and then put a bookmark in it. There's no stop. It just is 10 hours, and it's like, you are driving me nuts.
That's funny.
I refuse to go to bed angry.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I listened to the Everand as well, and I was a little bit baffled sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
what? This is the stop?
Yeah, it's broken up into like 18 to 21 minute chapters, like the whole way through. And like, he'll just cut in the middle of a sentence, and you'll like hear the voice actor like stumble over a word. They'll say a word, and then there's a break, and then they'll say that word again and continue the sentence. So like, it's literally just broken up into some vocal white space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good.
This was fun. Thank you so much for letting me be a guest
Crash
today.
our party.
Thank you for coming in, Dan. Thank you for being here. And folks, we ask everybody in the community, if you want to read the book, if you want to come back next time, if you want to add questions or comments, you don't have to come on stream. You're welcome to. People are welcome to come in and guests come in and share their thoughts and feelings, or you could just be in chat and share your thoughts. Like, we talk about the books while we're reading it with spoiler tags in Discord, hashtag exclamation Discord and chat to join us there. This is a community where we just want to share and have fun together. So welcome in. Thank you everybody for being here. Tell us about next month's book, Annie.
Well, I should leave it to Aaron because Aaron picked next month's book. So it's October and we want to be scared. So he picked A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Tremblay. Oh,
You missed the R.
Tremblay. I haven't even read the synopsis of it yet.
Don't.
Okay.
Don't.
Okay.
It is also
Go in blind.
on Everand. I'm going to go ahead and save that. 8 hours, 49 minutes. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. 8 hours and 49 minutes sounds like heaven to me.
Yeah,
Sounds
so
like a vacation.
I bounced back and forth between 3 or 4 different books, and part of my deciding factor was length because we just came off of that big old book. And, I wanted something that I haven't read. I'm a horror guy. I love it. So I wanted to pick something that I haven't read, but is highly. I've heard a lot about Paul Tremblay. However, I am not reading the synopsis. I have just heard recommendations. The front of the book, I mean, take this for what you will, has a Stephen King quote that said it scared the living hell out of him, and he's pretty hard to scare, which is pretty cool. And Paul Tremblay is a winner of multiple Bram Stoker awards, and he's on the juror. He's a juror on the Shirley Jackson Awards, so he's very prestigious in the horror community. And I'm really excited for this one. I'm not reading anything about it though.
Okay.
I want to go in blind. I hope so. I want it to be super spooky. I'm going to read it before bed.
Oh my god.
And
No, fuck that.
Is this a book that I'm going to have to read like during the daylight?
Yeah, I'm going to read it on my walks in the sunlight so that I'd not. Oh my god, it's going to be at night before bed. Fuck that. I want to sleep.
Yes. I'm so excited.
I'm going to be listening to it while I drive around town. Hopefully I don't have any jump scares.
Yeah.
That is one cool thing about books is jump scares are not impossible.
Yeah.
But
Very unlikely.
It's different.
Yeah.
Very different. All right. Well, again,
definitely looking forward to
Next month?
October's book, A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay.
Starting it tomorrow. I can't wait.
Somewhere October in the 20s. We'll pick a date.
Yeah.
We'll post it in the Discord. And again, thank you
go
everybody
from
for
there.
being here. All right, we'll wrap it up there. We're not going to raid out. We're just going to call it there. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope everybody has a great night. Thanks again.
Well, we all crushed it. This book is what you call hard sci-fi. If you enjoy the more scientific jargon, then this one's for you. I definitely wanted more of what Part 3 was giving. Tell me more about those survivors on Earth. Overall, not too bad. If you want a challenge, then definitely pick this one up. I also want to thank our guest Dan for joining us. We hope you'll come back next time for a double feature of frightening reads. A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, and We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver.